Like you told me that you used to hear Joe from the neighbor playing the bass, and that's where you got like, oh, I want to be on the bass thing. So was it rock music that Joe was playing, the same genre as you play?
Say one more time. The question.
Joe Joe was playing rock music,
Oh
the
yeah.
same genre that you play.
No, he was a little older than me, so he was the older generation. As I got older, we started playing in the same clubs a little
Oh,
bit, and he came out to see me play, and I would go see him play. And then he moved to California before I did. Then when I went
hmm,
out to Los Angeles, we connected again, and we still talk often. I message each day. He's a dear friend of mine. But he's a great bass player. He doesn't play as much now. He owns a sound company,
hmm. All right.
uh, and they do sound around Southern California. But he still plays occasionally, and he's still great.
Amazing, amazing. So,
Yeah.
sir, as you're such an inspiration to the musicians, what and you have been to India and you know the Indian classical music, you have heard some. So, what would be your advice for the Indian musicians who are right now budding? What would be your advice that how do they go ahead in this career path of music and make out great like you did, sir?
Well, when I do my clinics and seminars, master class, whatever you want to call them, one piece of advice I like to give, and I think you will see that it makes sense. I always advise musicians to get in a band.
Hmm.
Get in a band that plays songs. Get in a band that plays songs that has singing.
All right.
If you look at the most successful musicians in the world, Paul McCartney from the Beatles, he was in a band. They played songs. The songs had singing.
Yes.
Sting was in the Police. They played songs. They were singing. John Entwistle was in a band. They played songs, was singing. Geddy Lee was in a band. They played songs, they were singing. So that's the best bass players that, and the most famous ones we know were in a band that played songs, and there was singing in the songs.
Yeah.
So a lot of players get like instrumental music, which is good.
Hmm.
I don't listen to a lot of instrumental music except for things like
Oh,
classical and various things. But there's a few things, but mostly I listen to music that has singing in it. So I think it's a wise thing for success to reach people with your music if you have that description of your band, that you play songs and in those songs they're singing.
yeah.
Make sense?
Makes sense, sir.
And I see a lot of young players, learning some fabulous playing, and that's cool. But we did a seminar online the other night, and one of the bass players, a very famous bass player, Lee Sklar, he's played on about 23,000 recordings.
I was there, sir. I was watching that
Oh,
seminar.
you saw that. And we asked him, how many times did you ever take a solo? He said, never.
Ever.
Bass players now are worrying about solo, three-hand technique, hammer on, but they're not playing songs with singing. So
Right.
I love to solo. I love to play a lot of wild bass stuff, but the biggest song I had was "To Be With You" by Mr. Big.
Mr.
Simple
Big.
song, simple bass, singing, and I love that song.
Hmm.
So I think sometimes I would advise young players to concentrate on the most important thing, which is to play songs, play them live. When I
Hmm.
started, we played every single night in a club somewhere, 3 or 4 sets a night, every night. One time
Oh,
we did 21 shows in a row,
in a
21 days,
row.
21 in a row.
Oh,
One time we did 3 complete shows in one day. Early morning, played outside for people in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. In the afternoon, we played after a Buffalo Bills football team exhibition game. We played for the people after the crowd. Got done with that and then went to the Club Lakewood in Niagara Falls, New York, and played a show that night. 3 complete shows in a day. So we played and played, and the songs we were playing were the Beatles, the Stones, Three Dog Night, Grand Funk Railroad, Crosby, Stills, Nash, ZZ Top.
Wow.
All these bands, we played copy tunes. So many musicians now also, they want to play, well, I just want to play original music. Well, the Beatles didn't. The Beatles were a copy band. Van Halen was a copy band. AC/DC was a copy band. Almost every band started playing copy tunes. Nobody started playing originals, really. Very few.
True.
So to be in a band, if you can't write a great song yet, do what the Beatles did. They played copy songs in clubs in Germany. Right. I've got all kinds of recordings of them from the early days. And even on their first record, the Beatles, were many copy tunes. Please, Mr. Postman, A Taste of Honey, Twist and Shout, all copy tunes. Even Van Halen started with a copy tune, with You Really Got Me by the Kinks. So in many bands, being in a copy band, a cover band, is great training. It's great to do. You learn how to play songs that are hits. You learn how to deal with an audience. So those things, as much as technique, I show a lot of that, and people are interested in that. But really, the best thing for me was that I was in a band that played songs with singing. And before we had originals, we played copy songs for years. Great training. The best players I know were in copy bands.
They were.
You know, so it's great training. And every artist does this, not just musicians. Painters, when they're being trained, copy the masters. They copy the great painters.
Right.
Even and classical musicians, they learn pieces by other composers. There was even a famous writer in America who took a typewriter and a very famous book, very famous War and Peace by Tolstoy or some very famous book, and he by hand typed a copy of the entire book, just to get what it feels like to write a book like that. And he became a very famous, Hunter S. Thompson is his name. He became a very famous author. But even they copy. So to copy from the masters is a great way to begin. And also the fact that I'm speaking to musicians in India, I love to see a taste of your culture and your music in your songs.
Yes, sir.
All songs are very westernized. And I know a very, very famous guitarist who told me a story. He went to India, and there was a young guitarist there, and everybody said, "You've got to hear this guitarist. He's amazing. You're going to love him." And he was excited about it. Well, let me hear him. So the guy comes into the dressing room and plays one of the guitar player's songs. Not Indian music, but he played one of the famous guitar player's songs. They go, "Wait, I thought I'd hear you play something Indian," but they didn't. They played one of the guitar player's songs, and he was kind of disappointed. He was hoping to hear some new cool thing instead of his stuff played by someone else. So I'd love to see and inspire Indian musicians to keep a flavor of your music and culture. Just like in America, we have. I live in Nashville now. There's a lot of country music here. Very American. They even call it Americana. What style of music? It's very American from the early days. A lot of that is in early rock and roll, early times. The Everly Brothers, who inspired the Beatles, they were very Americana, very much American music, songs about the South and songs about their hometown, very much like American style. So I'd love to see Indian musicians keep a flavor of India in their writing.
True, true. I guess it usually happens because all the young musicians across India are so much influenced by the Western culture that they go and try to adopt everything, their food, their culture in terms of living, and of course, music is a huge part, plays a huge
Exactly.
role.
And that's good to learn another culture's music. I think it was good for me to learn about Indian music and about flamenco, Spanish. Paco de Lucia, I was a big fan of his, a great flamenco guitarist. Uh, some Asian music, also Chinese and Japanese that I heard and listened to. Indonesian gamelan music, another wild style of music,
Yes, sir.
distantly related to some Indian style. Uh, but and it helped me with my playing. So yes, to learn some of the Western music is good, but don't forget your own culture too. I think it's important.
So you were telling me how you were hearing some Indian classical music. So did you ever try to put that in your playing?
Well, I often use a lot of well, Bach called them pedal tones. We got when you keep one note. So, but I know that in Indian music, it's more of a drone. So that's all
Sure.
inspired by listening to Indian music for hours and hours and hours. Some of the notes that are common in Indian music. But you notice this interval was
Yes.
used in a very famous song by Led Zeppelin. Dancing Days by Led Zeppelin uses that little Indian kind of a feel in there. And I
Hmm.
always like a lot of the early Beatles songs. They really introduced the world to Indian music by the songs that they did was quite. And I grew up with the Beatles, of course, and that's how I began to listen to it. But the Indian scales and the drone tone, because they usually use there's another instrument that they use, tambura,
The
or
sitar?
just drones a sound. I think it's called a tambura, maybe. Anyway, along with a sitar player. Usually there is a one guy just holding that.
Hmm. Tanpura, or
Say again?
Tanpura.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
True, true.
So
Yeah.
so I use that in my playing a lot, and I find it interesting that Bach, you know, so Bach used a lot of that drone, hold one note and move around it. That it's
Right.
very common in Indian music too. Interesting.
True, true, sir.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And there's another wall on the other side.
Oh,
So there's probably, maybe like 50 bases here.
50 bases in your house.